This is a Minecraft SMP with 9 of the loveliest players. And for the past 2 years, I've been developing a completely new difficulty which makes the game borderline impossible to beat. They not only have to survive Overworld and Nether, but also defeat an insanely overpowered custom enderdragon boss.
Whoa. This is all vanilla Minecraft?
This is modded!
How did you do these effects?
And I created all of this in vanilla Minecraft. But how did we even get to this point? You see, as a developer, I straight up suck at Minecraft. I've been playing this game for over 10 years and I still can't memorize how to craft a bow. So I could either just get good or make everyone else bad as well. Now, some of the mechanics I made can be outplayed in some way. So a bucket naturally counters a cow, for example, or holding a fish protects you against sharks. I'm not gonna spoil everything, but about a year into the development, I received a very mysterious message. Hello.
So what if we made like a data pack, right? But everything's super realistic. So you punch a tree, you hurt your arm. So you've got to really like slow play the game. Do you know what I mean? Like loads of features that make Minecraft incredibly hard. Okay, that's actually pretty funny because I have been working on difficulty like that. Well, except that I replaced realism with stupidity. But I mean, if you're up for a challenge, then you can just play that if you want. Maybe I could invite a couple of friends? With 9 YouTubers about to play my data pack, I just knew it had to be good. So I completely reworked and updated some of the features. And instead of this boring lava wave model, for example, there is now a fully animated one. But the biggest problem was the dragon fight was still insanely boring because I initially simply made it shoot multiple fireballs and drop explosive eggs every now and then. But after working on this data pack for so long, I hated it. Like, I spent a week animating individual pixels and the inside of a crafting table that nobody's even gonna see. And in comparison, those dragon abilities are just the most boring thing I've ever seen in my life. So I straight up just deleted the code and decided to create a completely custom boss instead. I settled on the idea of having a 3-headed dragon because 9 years ago I actually created a custom Hydra boss and I kinda wanted to see how much my coding and modeling skills have improved. But how can this model exist in vanilla Minecraft? Well, let me introduce you to the most amazing Minecraft feature, display entities. You can summon these to show any item or block and even apply custom models with a resource pack. So as a first step, we can just summon one of these entities for every single body part and then simply teleport into each other and we have our custom mob. If you want to animate it, you can just change any of the model's position or rotation. So if you set up a chain of command blocks, you can make the mob do whatever you want. With complex animations, those are thousands of commands you'd have to manually write though. Luckily, there is a plugin called AnimatedJava, and with that you can conveniently create an animation inside of a modeling software, click export, and the plugin automatically generates these thousands of commands. And for the hitboxes, I just summon some invisible pigs, a big one for the body and then smaller ones for the heads and the tail. Alright, so model done, but there is a big problem. Normally, you make custom mobs by turning an existing one invisible and just teleporting a model to it. That doesn't work with the dragon though, because it just ignores invisibility for whatever reason. And you generally can't really control it with commands well. So I have to somehow replicate the normal dragon flight pattern with commands, and I don't know how to do that. Never mind, figured it out. And it was surprisingly easy actually. So as a first step, I'm scanning the entire end island because it just generates differently for every single seed. And once I run my setup function here, there are invisible marker entities between each of the towers on the inside, outside, bottom and the top. Next, I have this insanely long command that gradually makes me face the nearest of these entities. If I now teleport myself forward and then select a new target, once I reach my current one, we got some amazing random movement. Looks chaotic on myself, but I can just apply that to the dragon and it randomly moves around. So let's actually turn up the game speed by like 1000% and then observe what happens. The second key feature I wanted to center this boss around was this glowing crystal tail. So the first attack I prototyped was a ground slam where the dragon kinda does a front flip and then uses its tail to create a shockwave. Now here's where it gets fun.
If you shoot the dragon tail, it drops as an item that you can then place anywhere in the world. But if you place it on the impact point of the ground slam attack, the two tails collide, which stuns the dragon for a few seconds, and you can do a lot of damage with close range weapons. It's not super easy to place it in the right spot at first, but once you figure it out, it is so satisfying. I even made the heads adjust to the ground, because before I implemented this feature, the heads could sometimes get stuck in the ground when falling on uneven terrain, and small details like that just add up and make the whole thing feel a lot more polished. The third main theme for the dragon is electricity. There luckily is a Minecraft particle called Electric Spark, which works great for this purpose. You can spawn a bunch of these in a specific area and also edit the rough dimensions, but how on earth do you spawn them in the shape of a random lightning bolt? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I created a completely dynamic lightning particle system for this. Imagine you have an armor stand at the start of the lightning bolt. First of all, I pick a random direction and move it forward by a random distance while leaving a trail of particles. It then changes its own direction and all of that happens in a single Minecraft tick. So now I can simply specify some lightning bolt properties and the Datapack does all of the rest for me. So here I have it spawn in random directions, and here we have crazy long directional ones. But that is instant lightning. So if I want to have a lightning projectile, for example, I have to build a completely new system for that. And I did. So check this out, this is sick. I can simply specify any entity that the lightning bolt is supposed to target. And for this demonstration, reaching one of these armor stands automatically just spawns a new lightning bolt. So if I press this button now, it just keeps bouncing around. I even added collision detection, different homing behaviors, and customizable projectile speed. This clearly needs to be stress tested, so let's just spam the hell out of this spawn button. I need more! There is a very specific reason why I made these projectiles. In the normal Ender Dragon fight, you usually start off by destroying all the end crystals and completely ignore the dragon, which in my opinion is a bit unfortunate, because it's a cool concept to incorporate the environment into the fight. I think it'd be much cooler though if the obsidian towers were involved during the entire fight and not just the beginning. So I just straight up made them indestructible. The effect for this might look complicated, but it is actually stupidly simple, because display entities can be spawned with a billboarding behavior, meaning it always just faces you no matter what. And I then just made a circle texture and spawned that at every single end crystal. And the lightning effect and the spinning rings are just display entities as well. So if you overlay all three of these components, you get a nice looking force field. But you might be wondering, how do you destroy something indestructible? Well, whenever the dragon loses 10% of its health, it flies to an end crystal to heal up again, and you can only destroy it in that very small time window. The best, or honestly worst part, is if you fail to interrupt the healing animation, the dragon relights one of the end crystals that you already destroyed. So you gotta be prepared when its health drops below one of these lines, or you're just gonna lose all of your progress again. If this is too hard for you, you can just change the difficulty. On the hardest one, you pretty much only get 1 or 2 shots if you're quick enough. On the easy difficulty, it gives you a few extra seconds. But what happens if the dragon shoots lightning while all of the towers are active? Well, that's when the lightning bolt starts targeting players. It doesn't seem to do a lot of damage, but that's just because I'm selecting an empty slot. The moment I hold an item, it increases the damage by a lot and also destroys the item. So whenever you see this icon, you have to just quickly switch to an empty slot or drop your item, otherwise you're not gonna have a good time.
Oh, it just deleted my bow.
Yep. Pretty powerful ability, and I think there needs to be some sort of counterplay. So the tails you get from a dragon now have a second functionality and attract lightning. You can't only use this to protect yourself, but also to protect a tower you already destroyed, which opens up the opportunity for a lot of strategy. You can use them offensively to stun the dragon, or defensively to secure the progress you already made. Completely up to you. I don't even know myself what the best way is. With that, the most basic mechanics are working, but it's an insanely boring boss fight when it only ever uses the same attack, so we gotta fix that. The second attack I added was shooting some classic fireballs, because I also wanted to use some elements from the original dragon. Depending on the stage, it can shoot multiple fireballs, which makes it much more difficult to get away. And the projectile speed increases with the difficulty, so good luck dodging those. The third attack is my absolute favorite. For this one, the dragon flies to the center to perch and then spawns a massive rotating force field. If you're on the outside, you are pretty much screwed and can't really outrun it, so you gotta get to the center quickly or pillar up to have a chance of survival. But don't get too close either, because the dragon bites. And if that's too easy for you, just increase the difficulty. And yes, this is still vanilla Minecraft. I actually used a pretty cool trick to achieve this effect. You can basically apply Minecraft enchantments to any item. So if you just create a transparent plane model and enchant it, you're left with just these glint visuals. If you now change the UV mapping to only cover a very small area, it basically stretches the texture, resulting in these vertical lines. And then I just increased the texture size, scaled the whole thing up, and boom, force field. For the collision detection, all you need to do is calculate the distance from a point to a line. The line just happens to spin around 0, 0, and the point is simply the position of the player. Next attack is absolutely sick as well, and the dragon shoots a massive laser at you. Might seem overpowered, but you can outplay this by looking at the indicator on the ground. And if you're in the inner circle, you get hit instantly. In the outer circle, you don't take immediate damage, but a glowing projectile spawns and chases you down. But at least that gives you some time to find or build cover. For attack number 5, the dragon swoops down on the player every now and then, which is not easy to dodge. And a pretty mean detail about this ability, the dragon can detect when a player is pillaring up and always targets those players to keep them on the ground. The final ability actually solves two problems. As I already mentioned, the lightning bolts shot after the healing animation only target the player if there are no destroyed end crystals. So realistically, that's just not gonna happen a lot. And I think switching to an empty inventory slot is a pretty unique way of countering an attack, and very different than just dodging all of the time. So I wanted to include this mechanic a bit more, which I did by making the dragon do some sort of aerial trick that shoots a lightning bolt, which also regenerates its tail, because that's just where the lightning bolt comes from. The second reason why this attack is amazing is that it kinda balances out the advantage of fighting with multiple people. It always summons one lightning bolt for every 2 players. So if you fight alone, it's more difficult to hit the end crystals, but protecting them with tails is a much more viable strategy. And if you play with 10 people, hitting the end crystals is easier, but it shoots 5 lightning bolts and can therefore also destroy 5 tails at once. The attacks are now looking super clean, so I think it'd be kinda cool to also customize the arena a bit. So I hit up my friend Rob, who built a few designs for me. The first one was just absolutely sick, like with shaders enabled. This is just insane. Like, I get the primal urge to just fight something in here. The only problem was that this wouldn't have worked with my movement system too well, because the dragon doesn't only fly on the inside of the arena and I don't want it to be covered by blocks too much. So he came up with another more simplistic design, and then the third one he made was a jackpot and 100% what I was looking for. So now, once you complete the first stage, the dragon loses a head, does a cool little charging animation and relights all of the end crystals, which also gives them a protection upgrade. And in the third stage, the cover increases even more, making it really difficult to shoot the crystals from the ground. Defeating such an insane boss shouldn't be unrewarded, of course, so I even added a special new weapon that drops when you kill it. It has a ridiculously overpowered ability. If you want to see what it does, you can download the Datapack and try it out for yourself. After 2 more weeks of work, I was finally ready to get to the fun part and start playtesting this fight. And as it turns out, that's an extremely important step in game development, because the fight did not go as I intended. There were 2 main issues. First of all, the players pretty quickly figured out a meta to defeat this boss, which consisted of just camping on top of the towers, meaning most of the attacks were completely useless and the gameplay just consisted of shooting arrows from a distance for like an hour straight, which was extremely boring. When they played from the ground, however, the gameplay was really engaging, with farming tails, dodging attacks, stunning the dragon and so on. So I knew I somehow needed a new mechanic which prevents the players from camping on top of the towers. I got some great ideas and feedback from my testers and ended up implementing a height fog mechanic, which just damages you over time above a certain altitude. That in turn made it really hard to actually hit end crystals on the big obsidian towers, so I also added temporary jump pads on the base of the tower where the dragon is currently healing. And I'm glad I did, because it is so much fun to destroy the end crystals in mid-air and then water bucket clutch to survive. Most of the time I honestly found myself using the jump pads even for the small towers just because it has so much more style. With that problem solved, there was one more issue to address, because one of the biggest struggles in game design is explaining mechanics to a player. I tried to do that with some hint messages and this little tutorial in the beginning of the fight. The big problem was people saw a big scary monster, were out for blood and didn't read any of the text. And I don't blame them. I am also the type of player to skip any text on screen because I'm not here to read, I'm here to game. So as a backup, in case players get confused, I simply give them a book containing the most important information. Genius solution, I know. Players don't want to read and I add a book.
How are we supposed to check a book when we're fighting?
But it's the best I can do. And with that, the data pack was finally completed and my friends could now all enjoy a bit of paint together. If you want to play this yourself, the download link is also in the description. I literally spent thousands of hours developing these projects, so if you want to support my work, make sure to subscribe and also check out my Patreon, because I already posted some sneak peeks on the next difficulty I'm working on.